what's been going on in the league the last week or so, and the idea of some positive COVID cases around a few teams, most notably with the Miami Marlins, the Miami Marlins. Yeah, I always screw that up. And most recently, with the Philadelphia Phillies, they had a couple test positive, I believe, a manager and a player, which is why their games were postponed against the Yankees. And also, most recently, there was some issues with St. Louis.
Yeah, I just pulled that up. Yeah, so it's not good, Dave.
I don't think it's bad. People are blowing. I don't know. I don't want to be insensitive, but like this was gonna happen. If you don't have a bubble like the NBA does, and you're allowing people to travel freely, someone here or there will more than likely test positive. However, and because I claim, like I said in the last video and even the video last week, I am not an expert. I don't know what I'm talking about. But at the same time, I have enough common sense to know that no matter how hard you try in this whole scenario, because there have been people who have to the T followed every rule in the book and still gotten COVID. Okay. They just have. That's a fact. Look it up. Most people will say it. Anyways, what worries me is that because of the way baseball is doing things, and it's not as controlled, and they did kind of try to really force this season, in that Manfred there wasn't a ton of, from what I've read, there wasn't like plan B or C. It was let's really go for plan A and hope for the best. Whereas I feel like the NHL and the NBA is doing the bubble, and football still has a whole nother month to figure it out. Part of why they canceled preseason. I don't think baseball did a good enough job in terms of like making protocols to like handle it. Like knowing what we know, and we're seeing it. Like, you know, obviously COVID positive tests aren't a good thing. It's not. I don't want to sound like it's not a big deal, because it is. But I just my biggest issue comes from how prepared they were, because they weren't. Yeah. And they knew full well that they were and just even before the season was kind of finalized that it was going to happen, all the talks between the unions and the players and everything, it just seemed very put together, very rushed and forced, and you know, and to some degree they felt pressured, because especially with baseball, you know, and this can be another discussion for another day, it does, no matter how you what your opinion is, it has an older fan base, and even some of the younger people over the years, because of the long seasons or the long games or whatever you want to call it, have just generally lost interest in caring week to week. I still know a lot of avid baseball fans who will watch, who will go to a game, who will support their team. Yeah. But it makes it really hard to be as invested for so long. And when you have that already hurting the sport from a viewing standpoint, and getting the numbers for like viewership and TV and stuff like that, you start to lose money. And then when, you know, outside of, you know, Yankees, Mets, Red Sox, some of the other teams out west, you know, on a Tuesday night, it's really hard to get a ton of people, and depending on who you're playing, it's really hard to fill up the stadium. And, you know, with that already being an issue for baseball, it seemed that they were so desperate to just have a season, they almost didn't kind of care how it was going to happen. They were just kind of winging it. And I know, obviously, they did more than wing it. But my point is, compared to the other sports, it feels like that's the way they went about it. And because of these recent COVID tests, it feels like they really might not finish the season. And that's scary, because these little things, not little, but these things might actually affect them playing. And because there's no backups, because there's no protocols in place, and or it just doesn't feel like there's a system to help it along. And when you have so many X amount of guys out that can't be replaced, I don't know. If this trend continues, I don't think they will finish the season. My bias is I want them to, but obviously health and safety comes first. That's 1,000% what I believe. And I just don't know if they have the protocols in place to make that happen.
I think when you look at the timeline of this, Dave,
That was me venting.
when things happened back in March.
By the way, sorry to cut you off.
Yeah.
Lundqvist is starting in net. He's getting the start tonight. I just got that update on my phone.
That's great.
Completely unrelated. We were talking about the Rangers in our last segment, so you can go check that out. So Henrik Lundqvist will get the start today at noon.
That's great. But the timeline of this, and you go back to March.
Yep.
And, baseball was kind of just still in spring training.
Yeah.
Just kind of ramping up.
Right.
But you felt the more direct impact initially was on NBA and NHL because they were starting to build into their postseason and its unfinished business kind of feel.
Yep, absolutely.
But as this is kind of drawn out, especially as NBA and NHL have put together plans, you're finding that the league that had the most to lose from all this is Major League Baseball.
100%.
Because you can argue that while obviously we watch the season to watch the postseason.
Yeah.
The majority of the money made for the NBA and NHL is of course the regular season. The playoffs obviously are great, but they don't make a lot. They don't make the majority of their money in that part of the season.
Correct.
You have baseball right now who had to lose out on 2/3
I know of their revenue
of their season.
Well, that's what I mean.
And to me, it's almost as if they were scrambling to put something out there.
Yes.
To the point where
it might have almost been worse.
And to make matters worse, Dave, I felt, and I didn't watch this intensely, but I thought the Players Association may have been a little unfair in some regards in terms of obviously the Players Association wants these players to get paid as much as they can.
Yeah, for sure.
And there's kind of back and forth about how many games and what the pro rate should be, and it seemed like they kind of had to really draw this out a little bit too much to the point where the best they could do was put a 60-game schedule out there.
I know.
Like you said, with these dangerous, I don't say dangerous, but they're not airtight protocols.
They're not.
Because
sorry, I'll cut you off. That's one
Yeah.
part, and this is not NBA talk because we could talk just about the NBA. That is one of the things I actually think that they did right.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of handling. And I'm not saying that's the answer for everything, the bubble, but I'm just saying they clearly thought more in depth.
Yeah.
And I feel like Major League Baseball did not.
And to your point, Dave, about the viewership, and there's been obviously the demographics have been declining. The viewership's been declining based on which demographics are still watching. And you're not necessarily getting that fresh new interest into the sport.
No, you're not. It's unfortunate. But
the worst thing that can happen is losing out on a season or having the embarrassment of trying to put something together and having it fall apart. I mean, and that's the thing.
Which is what I'm worried about.
We obviously are rooting for the season to go on.
Of course, I would. Of course.
The Yankees
got another win last night. So
yeah,
they're 5-1.
But when I first heard about Miami, I was like, okay, well, it was a breakout, and I guess you sort of expected that. But now when you start hearing more than Miami, now when you start hearing Philadelphia, St. Louis, is there another team coming in the horizon? To me, when you start adding more and more teams that have to adjust, that's what
in an already shortened season.
That's what worries me. Is
correct.
What's going to be the threshold that MLB says, all right, this is out of control? Is it the number of players? Is it the number of teams? Do they have a predetermined number in mind in terms of they say, okay, this is when
they might. I haven't looked in depth. That's why I'm speculating. I'm just
and we gotta hope. We just gotta hope and pray it's under control, Dave, because
and that's what I'm hoping.
It's not, to me. It's not gonna look good. I'm not saying Major League Baseball is done for good.
No,
but you're at into my mind, a very sensitive moment right now where you need to find ways to bring in viewers and you need to kind of survive through this season a little bit and focus on next year. Next year.
That's the goal. Everyone's hoping.
In the stands.
Yep, by 2021, that's the hope.
But from a PR standpoint, Dave, it does not leave a good taste in your mouth to see how this baseball situation played out.
No.
And like I said, that's why NHL, NBA. I don't know if I'll watch NBA, but I'll definitely watch NHL. Even if the Rangers don't make it all the way, I'll still watch a lot of that.
Yeah, I probably will too. Absolutely, I love hockey.
But then it does, and we can talk about this next time, Dave, is given what's happening with baseball, how much spillover this is going to the NFL.
And that's a funny. Thank you for bringing that up.
Yeah.
That is going to be a whole other topic next week that I want to dive into because as we approach, because training camp is essentially most players have reported. at this point. So,
but some have opted out.
if you want to know what's funny, well, it's not funny at all. 2/3 of the players that have opted out so far have been Patriots.
Interesting.
Out of the 12, I believe 7 have been New England Patriots.
Interesting. And Massachusetts is one of the safest places right now.
I don't think it has anything to do with that. I think it has
I
think it has more, and this is with a lot of sports because I've seen it with Major League Baseball too. A lot of the guys that are either new fathers have been the ones that have opted out because of the worry of the kid, and exposing it to a newborn baby could be just as.
And that's fair.
It is fair. I'm not mad at them at all. See, that's the thing here. I never want to come across as insensitive, Eric, to like that, because I know for some people this is a big deal.